It's now more than 72 hours since Russia began its land, sea and air invasion of Ukraine. Russian forces have already made their way into the capital, Kyiv, fighting and destroying cities bordering it. Here's the latest information. Residents are waking up to these images of their city after another night of loud explosions and firing. Russian troops have been seen inside Melitopol in the southeast. It witnessed heavy fighting on Friday. The Ukrainian military command says cruise missiles are being launched from the Black Sea. On Friday, Russian forces captured an island there after Ukrainians refused to surrender. Ukraine's presidential office says more than 3,500 Russian service personnel have been killed and almost 200 were captured. This has not been verified. In another video message, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to continue fighting.
Good morning, Ukrainians. There has been a lot of fake information online saying that I'm calling on our army to lay down arms and to evacuate. Listen, I am here. We will not lay down any weapons. We will defend our state because our weapon is our truth. And the truth is that this is our land, our country, and our children. And we will defend all of that. That's all I wanted to tell you. Glory to Ukraine.
OK, we will go to Mike Hanna in Washington in a moment. First, let's go live to Andrew Simmons, who's in the capital there, Kyiv, for us. So, Andrew, what's your reading of what we've been hearing from Mr. Zelensky overnight?
Well, Zelensky has never said he will contemplate surrender. He did ask for talks with Vladimir Putin, and he was given an impossible situation there with only an offer to have talks about peace if he was to surrender, and those talks would have to be with Viktor Lukashenko in Minsk, the capital of Belarus. So this is now, it would appear he thinks things are in their final stages, but he's reliant on the strength of will of his forces to take on the Russians, because the situation is getting harder and harder by the hour. The position now is something of a lull, but no, the feeling is that the final battle for Kyiv is beginning.
It may be beginning, Andrew, but is there a sense that the Russian forces haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve by the beginning of day 3?
I think there is an overwhelming force here, but the Russians have been held back, it would seem, with more fierce resistance than they had contemplated, they had expected. They've taken heavier losses, undoubtedly. The latest reports we have is that 2 Ilyushin 76 troop carriers, transport carriers for the Russian Air Force have been shot down. One 85 kilometers from the capital, the other about 25 kilometers, said to have been shot down near an airfield. Now, these reports haven't been verified yet, but wire agencies are quoting American sources as confirming a figure of 2 for those transport planes. They carry more than 100 paratroopers plus equipment, and we do know that other planes have got through, and paratroopers have been deployed in areas near the capital. Special forces also, and the armoured columns are coming from all directions. The one that was advancing from the west was taken on and repelled by armour from the Ukrainians and also missiles. That was actually at a place called Batsidskani. This was a metro station in the suburbs, but we're talking now really of the fighting going on in a 7-kilometer radius of where I'm standing. It is here that the public buildings are standing with undamaged at this stage. There's an eerie stillness, but then when the fighting starts, it's just a cacophony of wailing air raid sirens and crunches and smashes and all the things you'd expect. It's been a pretty horrendous 24 hours, and very few people have slept overnight.
And when it turns quiet, Andrew, in the morning, as it seems to do, on a regular basis now. This is day 3, as we were discussing. Is that part of the plan? Is that part of the tactic? Or is it just that it's easier for the Russians to try and do what they're trying to do under cover of darkness?
I'm not a military analyst, but I would certainly point to that last remark you made. Cover of darkness is always an asset to an invading force. And it's harder to defend. So, yes, this has been happening. Overnight was probably the biggest push on the capital so far. But, of course, intense fighting all over this country with the Russian Navy engaging the Ukrainian Navy as well. One battleship from the Ukrainian Navy has been hit. That's another report that hasn't been confirmed yet. But it's a pretty hazardous situation for everyone, particularly the civilians, obviously.
Any glimpse of diplomacy, any glimpse of anyone talking to anyone else?
It would appear not. The UN Security Council, which you'll be hearing about from Mike, I'm sure, later, but is yet another stamp of disaster on any prospect for negotiations. We had Zelensky trying to engage, calling those extraordinary calls for Europeans to lobby their governments to do more to actually try to get Russia brought to heel by stronger sanctions. But that is not going to happen, it would seem, although if the Ukrainians can hold on, the issue is how long can they hold on? Could there be more diplomatic measures if more pressure was put on Russia? Then that is the real issue right now, is how long can the Ukrainian forces keep defending the capital and the other major cities? One has to look at those as well. Yes, right now there is a priority in military terms in taking the capital, and Zelensky says that he is the main target, along with the leadership, and he's even said that his family is the main target as well. So this is a position now where the clock is ticking in every way, militarily, in terms of how long can people keep the defences going, and how long could diplomacy, the chances of diplomacy last? I'd say very, very limited indeed. And for the people, the anger amongst the people is extraordinary. The resolve of the fighters is absolutely extraordinary as well, because Zelensky said one more thing. It was a very short address, and it was right outside the presidential offices. We've identified those without any shadow of doubt. And he was saying that he respected the bravery of his fighters. He quoted from a military officer who had reported back on one of the soldiers going onto a bridge, a main bridge on one of the access routes into the capital, and having to defend it because of what was going on all around him. He went to detonate the bridge, to explode it, and not lost his life in the process. It was an act of ultimate courage.
Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Simmons there, joining us live from Kyiv with the very latest about what's going on in and around the Ukrainian capital. Live now, as Andrew was saying there, to Mike Hanna, our correspondent in Washington. So, Mike, as far as Mr. Zelensky's relationship with the US is concerned, it's a case of thanks but no thanks. I don't want you to evacuate me.
Well, it would appear to be so. There have been various reports that the U.S. has offered to help evacuate the Ukrainian president, but at this stage certainly appears to be the very opposite in terms of what he would want. Administration official has confirmed that there have been discussions with President Zelensky about where he would be safest to ensure the continuity of the Ukrainian government. And on Thursday, the press secretary at the White House was asked directly whether the U.S. was going to offer assistance, and she said that there have been discussions about the various ways in which the U.S. can assist the Ukrainian president, but then would not give any further details because she said of security concerns. But as we heard there from Andrew, President Zelensky is insistent that he's not going anywhere with or without anybody's help.
And what's the nature of this aid package that the US has just announced as well?
Well, this is a direct instruction from President Biden to the Secretary of State to release $350 million worth of military assistance. Now, a lot of this is still for training purposes, as much of the money in the last year, some $650 million, has been assigned to. However, specifically, it's also stated that there is some contents of military equipment within this package. What it is, not quite clear. Its speculation is that it involves items like Javelin missiles. But what we are hearing as well is that this is a presidential instruction, and it's done under a presidential regulation which allows the president to apportion such money or instruct the apportionment of such money without consulting Congress. Now, on a separate issue, Congress in the coming week is continuing to debate a massive $650 billion budget for humanitarian relief in Ukraine. So it's happening on all sorts of levels, but the $350 million that President Biden has instructed be released, that is in terms of an ongoing program of assistance to Ukraine, particularly with regard to training. But there again, you've got the issue logistically, given the situation in Ukraine, very difficult to see how any aid can get across the borders at this particular time.
Mike, understood. Thanks so much. Mike Hanna there joining us from Washington.